Something by Hans Christian Andersen. I mean to be somebody and to do something useful in the world, said the eldest of 5 brothers. I don't care how humble my position is, so that I can only do some good which will be something. I need to be a brickmaker. Bricks I always wanted, and I shall be really doing something. Something is not enough for me, said the second brother. What you talk of doing is nothing at all. It's a journeyman's work, or might even be done by machine. No, I should prefer to be a builder at once, where something real in it. A man gains a position, he becomes a citizen, has his own sign, his own house of call for his workmen. So I should be a builder. If all goes well in time, I shall become a master and have my own journeyman, and my wife will be treasured as a master's wife. What is what I call something? I call it all nothing, said the third. Not in reality any position. There are many in a town the father of a master builder position. You may be an upright man, but even as a master, you will only be ranked a more common man. I know better what to do with it. I will be an architect, which will place me among those who possess riches and intellect, and who speculate in art. I shall certainly have to rise my own endeavors from a bricklayer laborer or as a carpenter's apprentice, a lad wearing a paper cap, or in a worse silk hat. I shall have to fetch beers and spirits for the journeymen, and they will call me foe, which would be an insult. I shall endure it, however, for I shall look upon it all as a mere representation, a masquerade, a mummery which tomorrow it is. I myself, as journeyman, shall have served my time, will have vanished, and I shall go my way, and all that has passed will mean nothing to me. When I shall enter the academy, get instructed in drawing, and be called an architect. What is something? It is indeed more than something. I may even attend to rank and have something placed before or after my name, and I shall build as I have done before me. But this is where will be always something to make me remembered, and is not worth living for. Not in my opinion, said the fourth. I will never follow the lead of others, and only imitate what they have done. I will be a genius, become greater than all of you together. I will create a new style of buildings, and introduce a plan for erecting houses suitable to the climate which material essay obtained in the country and thus suits national feeling and the developments of the age. Beside building, a story for my own genius. But supposing the climate and material are not good for much, said the fifth brother, it would be very unfortunately for you and have an influence over your experience. Nationality may assert itself until it becomes affliction, and the development of a century may run wild as youth often does. I see clearly that none of you will ever really be anything worth notice, however you may now fancy it. Do as you like, I shall not imitate you. I mean to keep clear of all these things and criticize what you do. In every action something imperfect may be discovered, something not right, which I shall make it my business to find out and expose. There will be something I fancy. And he kept his word and became a critic. People said of his fifth brother, there's something very precise about him. He has a good hair-piece, but he does nothing. And on that very account, we thought he must be something. Now you see, this is a little story which will never end. As long as the world exists, there will be always be men like these 5 brothers. And what became of them? Were they each nothing or something? You should hear. It is quite a history. The eldest brother, he who fabricated bricks, soon discovered that each brick he had finished brought him in a small coin, if only a copper one, and many copper pieces, if placed one upon another, can be changed into a shining shilling. And at whatever door a person knocks who has a number of these in his hands, whether it be a baker's, a butcher's, or a tailor's, the door flies open, and he can get all he wants. So you see, the value of bricks. Some of the bricks, however, crumbled to pieces or were broken, but the elder brother found a use for even those. On the high bank of earth, which formed a dike on the sea-coast, a poor woman named Margaret wished to build herself a house, so all the imperfect bricks were given to her, and a few whole ones with them, for the eldest brother was a kind-hearted man, or he never achieved anything higher when making bricks. The poor woman built herself a little house. It was small and narrow, and the window was quite crooked, the door too low, and the straw roof might have been better thatched. But still it was a shelter, and from within you could look far over the sea, which dashed wildly against the sea wall on which the little house was built. The salt waves sprinkled their white foam over it, but it stood firm. It remained long after he, who had given the bricks to build it, was dead and buried. The second brother, of course, knew better how to build than poor Margaret, for he served in apprenticeship to learn it. When his time was up, he picked up his knapsack and went on his travels, singing a journeyman's song. While young, I can wander without a care, and build new houses everywhere. Far and bright are my dreams of hope, always thought of wherever I roam. Hurrah, for a workman's life of glee! Where's a loved one at home who thinks of me? Home and friends I can never forget, and I mean to be a master yet. And that is what he did. On his return home, he became a master builder. Built one house after another in the town, till they formed quite a street, which, when finished, became really an ornament to a town. These houses built a house for him in return, which was to be his own. But how can houses build a house? If a house were asked, they could not answer. But the people would understand and say, certainly the street built his house for him. It was not very large, the floor was of lime. But when he danced with his bride on the lime-covered floor, it was to him white and shining, and from every stone in the wall flowers seemed to spring forth and decorate the room as with the richest tapestry did. It was really a pretty house, and in it were a happy pair. The flag of the corporation fluttered before it, and the journeyman and apprentice shouted, "Hurrah!" He had gained his position. He had made himself something, and at last he died, which was something too. Now we came to the architect, the third brother, who had been first a carpenter's apprentice, and worn a cap and served as an errand boy, but afterwards went to the academy and risen to be an architect, a high and noble gentleman. Ah, yes, the houses of a new street, which the brother, who was a master builder, erected, may have built his house for him, but the street received its name from the architect, and the hindmost house in the street became his property. But it was something, and he was something. For he had a list of titles before and after his name. His children were called well-born, and when he died, his widow was treated as a lady of position, and that was something. His name remained always written at the corner of the street, and lived in everyone's mouth as its name. Yes, this was also something. And about what the genius of the family, the fourth brother, who wanted to invent something new and original, he tried to build a lofty story himself, but it fell to pieces, and he fell with it and broke his neck. However, he had a splendid funeral with a city flags and music and procession. Flowers were strewn on the pavement, and 3 orations were spoken over his grave, each one longer than the other. He would have liked us very much during his life, as well as the poems about him in the papers. For he liked nothing so well as to be talked of. A monument was also erected over his grave. It was only another story over him, but it was something. Now he was dead, like the 3 other brothers. The youngest, the critic, outlived them all, which was quite right for him. It gave him the opportunity of having the last word, which to him was of great importance. People always said he had a good headpiece. At last his hour came, and he died and arrived at the gates of heaven. Souls always enter these gates in pairs. So he found himself standing and waiting for admission with another. And who should it be but old Dame Margaret from the house on the dike? It is evidently for the sake of contrast that I and this wretched soul should arrive here exactly at the same time, said the critic. Pray, who are you, my god woman? Said he. Do you want to get in here, too? And the old woman sighed as well as she could. She thought it must be St. Peter's himself who spoke to her. I'm a poor old woman, she said, without any family. I'm old Margaret. I live in the house on the dike. Well, and what have you done? What great deed have you performed down below? I have done nothing at all in the world that could give me a claim to have these doors open for me, she said. It would be only for mercy that I can be allowed to slip in through the gate. In what manner did you leave the world? He asked, just for the sake of saying something, for it made him feel very worried to stand there and wait. How I left the world, she replied. Why, I can scarcely tell you. During the last years of my life, I was sick and miserable, and I was unable to bear creeping out of bed suddenly into the frost and cold. Last winter was a hard winter, but I have got all over it. There were a few mild days, as your honor no doubt knows. The ice lay thickly on the lake as far as one could see. The people came from the town and walked upon it, and they say they were dancing and skating upon it. I believed in a great feasting. The sound of beautiful music came into my poor little room where I lay. Towards evening, when the moon rose beautifully, thought not yet in its full splendor, I glanced from my bed out over the wide sea, and where, just where the sea and sky met, rose the curious white cloud. I lay looking at the cloud, till I observed a little black spot in the middle of it, which gradually grew larger and larger, and when I knew what it meant. I am old and experienced. And all of his token is not even seen. I knew it, and a shuddering seized me. Twice in my life had I seen the same thing. As I knew that there would be an awful storm with springtide, which would overwhelm the poor people who were now out on the ice, drinking, dancing, and making merry. Young and old, the whole city were there. Who was to warn if no one noticed the sign or knew what it meant, as I did? I was so alarmed, but I felt more strength in life than I had done for some time. I got out of bed and reached the window. I could not crawl any farther from weakness and exhaustion, but I managed to open the window. I saw the people outside running and jumping about on the ice. I saw the beautiful flags waving in the wind. I heard the boys shouting, "Hurrah!" and the lads and lasses singing, and everything full of merriment and joy. My dream was a white cloud with a black spot hanging over them. I cried out as loudly as I could, but no one heard me. I was too far off from the people. Soon the storm burst, the ice broke, and all who were on it were irretrievably lost. They could not hear me, and to go to them was quite out of my power. Now, if I could only get them safe on land, then come the thought, as if from heaven, that I would rather set fire to my bed, and the house be burned down, than that so many people should perish miserably. I got a light, and in a few moments the red flames leaped up as a beacon to them. I escaped, fortunately, as far as the tree-tops of the door, but where I fell down and remained. I could go no farther. The flames rushed on towards me, flicked on the window, and rose high above the roof. The people on the ice became aware of the fire, and ran as fast as possible to help a poor sick woman, who, as I thought, was being burned to death. There was not one who did not run. I heard them coming, and I also at the same time was confused of a rush of air and a sound like the roar of heavy artillery. The spring flood was lifting the ice covering, which broke into 1,000 pieces. But the people had reached to a sea wall where the sparks were flying around. I had saved them all. I suppose I couldn't survive the cold and fright. So I came up here to the gates of paradise. I am told they are opened to poor creatures such as I am, and I have no house left on earth. I do not think what will give me a claim to be admitted here. When the gates were opened, and an angel led the old woman in. She had dropped on the straw out of a straw bed when she set it on fire to save the lives of so many. It had been changed into the pursled gold, and the gold that constantly grew and expanded the flowers and fruit of immortal beauty. "See," said the angel, pointing to the wonderful straw. "This is what the poor woman has brought. What does straw bring? And no one has accomplished nothing, not even made a single brick. Even if thou couldst return and at last produce so much, very likely when made the brick would be useless, unless done with a good will, which is always something. But thou canst not return to earth, and I can do nothing for thee." When the poor soul, the old mother who had lived in the house on the dike, pleaded for him, she said, "His brother met all the stones and bricks and sent them to me to build my poor little dwelling. It was a great deal to do for a poor woman like me. Could not all these bricks and pieces be as a wall of stone to pray for him? It is an act of mercy. He is wanting it now, and here it is, very fortune of mercy." "When," said the angel, "the brother he would has been looked upon as the meanest of you all, whose honest deeds to be appeared so humble. It is he who has sent you to this heavenly gift, who shalt not be turned away, who shalt have permission to stand without the gate and reflect and repent of a life on earth. But thou shalt not be admitted here until thou hast admitted one good deal of repentance, which will indeed for we be something." I could have expressed that better, thought the critic, but he did not say it aloud, which for him was something after all.